Rain streaked down the narrow streets of the city, painting everything in a gray, sorrowful hue. Amara pulled her thin coat tighter around her shoulders, shivering as the wind whispered through the alleys. Life had never been kind to her. Every day was a struggle. Long hours at the diner, scrimping to pay rent, trying to keep her younger brother fed. Yet despite it all, she had a heart that refused to harden. Tonight, though, something felt different. The city seemed quieter, almost as if it were holding its breath. She clutched her bag, moving quickly past the puddles, hoping to reach the corner where she could catch a cab home. Then, she saw him. A small figure had collapsed onto the wet pavement, tiny hands scraping against the stones as the boy cried out in pain. Panic surged through her chest. She had no idea who he was, but instinctively, she rushed forward. "Hey! Are you okay?" she called, her voice trembling. The boy looked up, tears streaking his cheeks. I fell," he whispered. "I can't get up." Amara's heart clenched. He was alone. Soaked through, shivering. She knelt beside him, trying to help him sit upright, but his small body shook too violently to steady. Her mind raced. Who would he belong to? Where were his parents? Then a name escaped her lips almost without thought. I need to call someone who can help. But who? Who could possibly fix this situation? The boy whimpered again, clutching his leg. That's when it hit her. Her stomach dropped as she realized who he must be. Rumors everywhere about the powerful Mafia boss who ruled this city with an iron hand. And this boy had to be his son. Her hands shook as she fumbled for her phone. She knew it was dangerous. The Mafia boss, feared by everyone. People said he had no mercy, that a wrong word could cost someone their life, but staring at the child's tear-streaked face. She didn't hesitate. She dialed the number she had memorized from an old newspaper article. Her fingers were numb. Her breath came in short gasps as she held the line. Then a deep, cold voice answered. "What is it?" Amara swallowed hard. "Sir, I'm sorry to bother you, but your son, he's hurt. He fell. He can't get up." Silence. Her heart pounded in her chest. Every second stretched into an eternity. Then finally the voice came again. Sharper, colder. "Where is he?" "In the street, near the corner of Willow and Fifth." "Please, hurry," she pleaded, her voice breaking. A pause. Then a single word. "Stay with him." Before she could respond, the line went dead. Amara stared at her phone, hands trembling. Her mind was a whirlwind of fear and anticipation. She had just called one of the most dangerous men in the city, risking everything. And now she had to wait, while his wrath, or his gratitude, arrived. She knelt beside the boy, trying to comfort him. "It's okay. Help is coming," she whispered. But even as she said it, doubt gnawed at her. What if she had made a terrible mistake? What if the Mafia boss blamed her? For his son's fall? Minutes felt like hours. The rain poured harder. Every distant engine made her heart leap, and then a sleek black car slid to a stop at the corner. The doors opened, and a tall figure stepped out, his presence commanding. "Dangerous!" Amara's breath caught. This was him, the man everyone feared. The Mafia boss and her life, along with the boys, was about to change forever. The black car's engine cut through the night like a knife, echoing off the narrow alley walls. Amara's heart hammered so violently, she feared it might burst through her chest. The boy clung to her arm, his small body trembling from pain and cold. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down, suffocating, as the shadow of the approaching man grew closer. The door opened, and he stepped out. Every step he took radiated authority, a presence that made the very air seem to tighten. His dark coat clung to broad shoulders, and the sharp lines of his face were softened only by the storm of emotions in his eyes. Though she couldn't tell yet what those emotions were. "You called me?" His voice was low, commanding. A subtle edge in it made Amara flinch. I didn't know who else to call," she stammered, keeping her gaze on the boy. He fell and he couldn't get up. I had to do something." The Mafia boss's eyes softened slightly. Not much, just a flicker, but enough for her to see the tension in his jaw loosen. For a fraction of a second, he knelt beside the boy, scanning the small figure with a precision that was almost surgical. "Son," he murmured, brushing the wet hair from the child's forehead. What happened? The boy whimpered again, pressing closer to Amara. I fell, he whispered, voice cracking. I couldn't get up. Amara swallowed hard, suddenly aware of the way his eyes darted between her and the boy. He was studying her, analyzing her every move, every breath. She felt exposed, like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting for him to decide her fate. You saved him, the Mafia boss said after a moment, his voice low, almost dangerous. You called me instead of running away. Amara's heart skipped a beat. I just couldn't leave him there, she said softly. He's just a boy. He studied her in silence. The storm seemed to pause, holding its breath. Then unexpectedly he nodded. Just slightly. Good. You did the right thing. His words were calm, but they carried weight. But understand this, next time you might not be so lucky. Amara's throat went dry. I understand, she whispered, unsure if she should be terrified or relieved. He lifted the boy gently, cradling him with a surprising tenderness. Amara watched, fascinated by the contrast. The same man whose name sent fear through the city's underworld now held his son, as if he were the most fragile thing in existence. Can you walk with me? He asked, eyes never leaving hers. Or will you stay here? In the rain? Amara hesitated, then nodded. She stepped forward, keeping pace beside him, holding the boy's small hand. Every step toward the car was a step deeper into a world she had never imagined, and one she couldn't escape. Inside, she noticed the details. A soft blanket laid carefully across the seat, a first aid kit neatly arranged, the faint scent of expensive cologne, and something warmer, more human. The boy's hand tightened around hers, grounding her in the moment. You did well, the Mafia boss said quietly. Brave even, Amara's cheeks flushed. I just did what anyone would do. He glanced at her then, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. Curiosity, interest, maybe even respect. Most people wouldn't have called me, he said. Most would have run. The car started moving, cutting through the rain-slick streets. Amara stayed silent, her mind racing. She couldn't help but notice how his eyes stayed forward, focused, protective, tense, and she realized, this night, this single choice had changed everything, her life, his life, and the boy's life, now entangled in ways she could not yet understand. As the city lights blurred past, she felt the first tremor of something dangerous and irresistible stirring inside her. Fear, yes, but also a strange pull she couldn't explain, and deep down, she knew one thing for certain. The Mafia boss was watching her, and nothing would ever be the same again. The car's leather seats were warm beneath her hands, yet Amara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. She sat stiffly, keeping her eyes forward, careful not to meet his gaze. The boy rested between them, clutching her arm like a lifeline, and she could feel the tiny rhythm of his breathing, uneven, but slowly steadying. The Mafia boss drove in silence at first, his expression unreadable. Amara's mind raced with questions. Would he scold her? Reward her? Or simply forget she existed after this night? Every so often she stole a glance at him. The sharp angles of his face, the deep-set eyes that seemed to see everything, and nothing. All at once, her heart fluttered in a way she couldn't name. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and steady. You're lucky he's okay. Most children wouldn't survive a fall like that, in this neighborhood. Amara swallowed, throat dry. I didn't think, She faltered, unsure how to explain that she had acted without thought, purely on instinct. Instinct can be a dangerous thing, he said, glancing at her briefly. The faintest trace of a smirk tugged at his lips. But tonight, it worked in your favor. Her pulse quickened. She wasn't sure if it was relief, or the intensity of his gaze. I didn't do it for favor, she murmured. I just couldn't leave him there. His eyes softened ever so slightly. Good. The boy stirred, looking up with wide, innocent eyes. Daddy? He whispered, reaching for him. The man's stern expression softened completely as he lifted his son into his arms, cradling him protectively. Amara felt a pang she couldn't name, envy, admiration, perhaps even fear. She had never seen anyone command both fear and tenderness with such ease. Are you hurt anywhere else? The Mafia boss asked gently, scanning his son. The boy shook his head, then frowned. "It hurts here," he murmured, pointing to his leg. Amara's stomach twisted. I can help," she offered, voice tentative. She hadn't expected to be asked for help, especially not by someone like him. He regarded her silently, as if weighing the weight of her words. Then almost imperceptibly he nodded. "Very well. Stay with him. Don't touch anything else." Amara nodded, grateful for the trust, and carefully examined the boy's leg. She applied pressure gently, trying not to move him too much. He whimpered softly, but seemed reassured by her presence. The Mafia boss watched her, leaning back against the seat, jaw tight with tension. The silence between them was heavy, yet charged with something unspoken, something that made her pulse race. After a few minutes he spoke again, tone softer this time. "You're brave." Amara's cheeks flushed. I didn't feel brave. I felt scared." "Good," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Bravery is not the absence of fear. It's acting despite it." She looked at him, startled by the sudden depth of his words. Behind the Mafia boss's cold reputation, there was a man who cared deeply for his family, and perhaps in some inexplicable way, for her. The rest of the ride was quiet. The storm outside faded into the soft patter of rain on the windshield. Amara held her breath, waiting for a sign, any sign of what was to come. And in that silence, she realized something terrifying and thrilling all at once. This was only the beginning. The Mafia boss's mansion loomed ahead, dark, imposing, yet oddly comforting in its solidity. Amara's heart raced as they approached, the boy nestled safely in her lap. She didn't know what awaited inside: anger, gratitude, danger, or something far more complicated. But she knew one thing for certain: her life, and theirs, had been irrevocably changed by a single phone call. In the rain, and as she stepped out of the car, the world seemed to shift, the line between fear and fascination blurring with every heartbeat. The mansion was silent as they stepped through the massive, ornate doors. The storm outside had faded into a drizzle, but inside, the tension was thick enough to feel in the air. Amara held the boy carefully, cradling him as if he were made of glass. Her heart ached, seeing him pale and shivering, but she forced herself to stay composed. She had to. The Mafia boss led them through a series of long, dim hallways. His presence was like a shadow, one that intimidated and protected. Servants appeared silently, offering blankets and warm towels, but it was clear he trusted only Amara to handle his son. "Set him down gently," he said. His deep voice was calm, but commanding. Amara obeyed, lowering the boy onto a soft, cushioned chair. The child whimpered, clutching her arm. "It hurts, Amara," he whispered, eyes wide with fear. Her heart twisted. "I know, sweetheart. We're going to take care of you. You're safe now," she whispered, brushing his damp hair from his forehead. The Mafia boss knelt beside the boy, examining his leg with practiced precision. "It's a bad bruise, but no fracture," he murmured. His hand rested lightly on the child's shoulder, protective, steady. Then his gaze flicked to Amara. "You acted bravely," he said quietly. "You stayed when most would have run." Amara swallowed, a swirl of relief and fear tightening her chest. I couldn't leave him alone," she murmured. "I just did what I had to." He studied her for a long moment. There was weight in that silence, as though he could see every thought passing through her mind. Finally, he nodded. "You have a good heart." The boy shifted, wincing. Amara immediately went to steady him. "We're going to put some ice on it," she said softly. "It'll help with the swelling." The Mafia boss watched her, arms folded, his expression unreadable. "You're patient," he said after a moment. "Not many would handle him like that." Amara's cheeks warmed. "I've always taken care of people," she said quietly. "It's who I am," he didn't answer. But there was something in his eyes, something that didn't match the stories whispered about him. Admiration, or maybe something far more dangerous. Then the boy's voice broke the silence. "Outside," he whispered, pointing toward the window. "Someone's there." Amara froze. Her eyes darted to the rain-streaked glass. At first she saw nothing, then a shadow. A lone figure standing at the edge of the property. The Mafia boss's expression hardened instantly. He rose, every movement deliberate, precise. Dangerous. "Who's there?" His voice was low, deadly calm, the kind of tone that didn't need to be raised to command fear. The figure didn't respond. It simply melted back into the darkness. Amara's breath hitched. "Is he dangerous?" she asked, her voice trembling. The Mafia boss turned toward her, his eyes dark, unreadable. "If anyone dares threaten my family," he said, "they will regret it." His gaze lingered on her, heavy with meaning. "You understand?" Amara nodded, though her heart pounded in her chest. This world, his world, was sharper, darker, and far more dangerous than anything she had ever known. And yet, despite the fear, a strange thrill coursed through her veins. She was inside his life now, and there was no turning back. The boy whimpered again. Amara knelt, taking his hand gently. "It's okay," she whispered. "No one will hurt you. I promise." The Mafia boss watched her in silence. For a moment, his eyes softened, just slightly. A flicker of something human beneath the armor of power and violence. He said nothing. But she could feel the weight of his gaze, the silent acknowledgement of her courage, and her place in this moment. Outside, the city slept under a blanket of rain and shadow, unaware of the quiet storm brewing inside these walls. A storm of danger, desire, and the fragile threads of trust slowly weaving between them. The mansion was quieter now. The storm outside had eased into a soft drizzle, yet inside tension lingered, thick and unyielding, like a shadow that refused to lift. The Mafia boss stood near the window, fingers drumming against the glass, eyes narrowed as he scanned the empty courtyard. The figure that had appeared moments ago was gone, but the memory of it gnawed at him. Amara remained kneeling beside the boy, her hands steady as she pressed a cold compress to his swollen leg. She didn't dare look up, but she could feel his gaze, heavy, sharp, and inescapable. His presence filled the room, a mix of danger and control that pressed against her chest with every breath. Finally, he turned. "You're reckless," he said, his voice low, dangerous. Amara flinched. I didn't mean to. You called me." He cut her off. "You summoned one of the most dangerous men in this city, for a child you barely knew." His words struck deep, but there was something in his tone she didn't expect. Something that wasn't just anger. It was concern, maybe even something softer. I didn't know who else to call," she said quietly. "He was hurt. I had to do something." He studied her, his gaze searching her face as though reading every unspoken word. For a moment, the silence between them felt heavier than the storm outside. Then his voice softened, barely. "You're brave," he murmured. "Most people would have run. Most people would have left him to his fate." Her heart pounded. "I just couldn't leave him there." He looked at her, really looked at her. The sharp edges of his expression eased, replaced by something thoughtful. "Courage isn't the absence of fear," he said quietly. "It's acting despite it." Her lips parted slightly. "I was terrified," she whispered, "but I couldn't ignore him." The Mafia boss stepped closer, kneeling beside her, not touching, but close enough that his presence wrapped around her like heat. "You risked a lot," he said. "You're not just brave, you're reckless, and reckless can be dangerous." Amara met his eyes, her pulse quickening. "I don't know what else I could have done," she said softly. "I couldn't just walk away." He nodded slowly, his gaze still fixed on her. "Most people in this city don't understand loyalty, or compassion, or fear." His voice dropped lower. "But you're different." Amara's breath caught. Something flickered between them, a moment raw and quiet and electric. Then, a small voice broke the silence. "Daddy, is she gonna stay?" The Mafia boss turned to his son, his face softening for the briefest second. Then he looked back at Amara. His eyes lingered, deep and unreadable, before he answered, "For now." He straightened. "She can stay, but understand this. My world is dangerous. Don't make me regret this choice." Amara swallowed, nodding. "I understand." He held her gaze for another long moment, then turned back toward the window. "Good, help him rest. Tomorrow will be long." As she adjusted the blanket over the boy, Amara felt the full weight of everything she'd stepped into. This mansion, this night, this man's world. And though fear coiled inside her, something else began to stir, something she couldn't name. The Mafia boss stood silently at the window, a dark sentinel watching over his family. And Amara, kneeling beside his son, realized the truth. The line between fear and fascination had already begun to blur. Outside, the rain fell softly against the glass, gentle now. But inside, a far more dangerous storm had just begun. Morning light filtered through the tall, ornate windows of the mansion, painting the room in soft, golden hues. The storm had passed, leaving the streets glistening with remnants of rain. Inside, the air was calm, but charged with tension, a fragile peace Amara could feel in every cautious step she took. The boy stirred in his bed, blinking sleepily at her. "Amara?" he whispered, his small voice hoarse. "Are you still here?" She smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Of course," she said softly. "I'm not going anywhere." He sighed, a tiny sound of relief, and curled back beneath the blankets. Watching him, Amara felt a swell of protectiveness deep in her chest. His safety had become her responsibility. She didn't hesitate to accept it, even though it meant stepping into a world she barely understood. Then came the quiet click of the door. The Mafia boss entered. His presence filled the room instantly, commanding, calm, and impossibly composed. Yet something in his posture this morning was different. Less threatening, more observant. His eyes found Amara almost immediately. That same sharp, unreadable gaze that seemed to see through everything. "She's been helping him rest," Amara said quickly, standing a little straighter. Her voice carried both pride and nervousness, a fragile blend of defiance and respect. The Mafia boss nodded slowly, his gaze lingering on her before shifting to his son. "I see," he murmured, approaching the bedside. He rested a hand over the boy's hair, strong fingers, surprisingly gentle. "You're feeling better?" The boy nodded, a small smile lighting his face. "Yes, Daddy. Amara helped me." The Mafia boss turned to her again, and for a heartbeat his expression softened. "You've earned a small measure of trust," he said. "Do you understand what that means?" Amara's heart skipped a beat. I think so," she replied carefully. "I just want him safe." "Good," he said, though his tone carried the quiet edge of a warning. "Trust is fragile in my world. Every choice has consequences." She nodded, solemn. She understood more than she could say. This wasn't just a father's home. It was a fortress of power, loyalty, and unspoken danger. And one wrong move could destroy everything. Still, a strange thrill flickered inside her. The challenge of it, the mystery of him. He studied her for a moment, his gaze deep and searching. Then he spoke again, his voice lower, steadier. "Most people would fear me," he said. "They'd run at the first sign of danger. But you stayed. You acted despite it." Amara swallowed, feeling warmth rise to her cheeks. "I just couldn't leave him there," she said. "I had to help." He gave a faint nod, almost to himself. "You're clever," he murmured. "Bravery, loyalty? Those are rare qualities." Amara's chest tightened at his words. "Thank you," she whispered. "I just want to do the right thing." His eyes lingered on her, dark, unreadable, but alive with something that sent her pulse racing. Curiosity, respect, maybe even something he wasn't ready to admit. Finally, he straightened. "Breakfast is ready," he said, voice calm and measured. "Eat. We have a long day ahead." The walk to the dining hall was quiet. But Amara noticed things now. The subtle rhythm of the mansion's life. The way guards stood at each doorway, discreet but always alert. The quiet efficiency of the staff who moved like clockwork. And above it all, the quiet authority he carried. He didn't need to raise his voice. His presence alone was command enough. During breakfast, the silence between them was neither awkward nor cold. It was intentional. Amara tended to the boy while the Mafia boss observed, offering small comments, quiet instructions. Their words were simple, yet each glance, each pause carried weight, unspoken tension, respect. Something neither of them could name, but both could feel. By the time the meal ended, something new had begun to form. A fragile thread of trust. The Mafia boss had seen her courage, her calm under pressure, her willingness to protect his son, even when she had every reason to walk away. And Amara, in turn, had seen something unexpected in him, beneath the fearsome reputation, beneath the ruthless control. There was a man who protected, who cared, who carried the burden of power in silence. As she helped the boy back to his room, A quiet realization settled over her. She was no longer just a stranger who had stumbled into danger. She had stepped into his world, and now she was part of it. And with that entry came a new rhythm, a rhythm of trust and fear, fascination and danger, where every heartbeat carried both risk and possibility. Outside, the city sparkled under the morning sun, calm and unaware. But within the mansion's walls, something was changing, slowly, inevitably. A storm of emotion, of alliances, of unspoken desire, was just beginning to brew. The sun had climbed higher, spilling warm light into the boy's room. Amara knelt beside him, gently adjusting the blanket tucked around his small shoulders. He had finally fallen into a peaceful sleep, his breathing even and soft. But she stayed alert, every sense sharp. The past night's chaos still echoed in her mind. Everything had changed, and deep down, she knew danger could return at any moment. "You're very good with him," a voice said behind her, low, steady, and unmistakable. Amara turned. The Mafia boss stood in the doorway, leaning casually against the frame, his arms crossed. His gaze was focused and unreadable, but not unkind. His eyes had a gravity to them, one that made her stomach tighten and her pulse quicken. I just try to help," she said softly, unable to hold his gaze for long. He stepped closer, his movements deliberate and calm, carrying that quiet power that filled the room. "You've been here since early morning," he said. "Most people would have left after last night." Amara swallowed hard. "I can't not help him," she replied simply. "He needs someone to care." He regarded her for a long moment, and then nodded slowly, a subtle, approving gesture. "It's rare," he murmured. "Loyalty and courage aren't qualities people hand out freely." "You have both." Her cheeks warmed, pride and nerves tangled together. She looked back at the sleeping boy, his face calm and innocent, and whispered, "I just want him safe." The Mafia boss's eyes lingered on her, unreadable but piercing. "Good," he said finally, almost to himself, "because the world outside these walls is not kind. Even a child like him isn't free from danger." Amara's heart skipped. "Danger?" she repeated quietly, her eyes darting to the window. Suddenly, the mansion's warmth felt thin, fragile. He didn't answer right away. He walked toward the tall window, looking out into the sunlight, though his eyes seemed fixed on something far beyond it. "There are people who would see him hurt," he said at last. "Enemies with old debts to settle, rivals who think they can wound me by going after what I love most." Amara's fingers tightened on the edge of the blanket. Her pulse thudded in her ears. "But we're inside the mansion," she said carefully. "He's safe here, isn't he?" "For now," he replied, turning toward her. His voice was calm but carried an undercurrent of steel. "But safety is temporary. It can disappear in an instant if you stop paying attention." Amara nodded, her throat dry. The weight of his words pressed down on her, a truth she could feel in her bones. She had stepped into a world where every breath mattered, where one wrong move could cost lives. And yet, even through the fear, something inside her steeled itself. She wasn't running. Not this time. He watched her quietly, his expression softening just slightly. "You've been patient with him," he said after a pause. "Most people would have lost their temper hours ago, but you've earned his trust." Amara's heart fluttered. "He's a sweet boy," she said softly. "He's just scared. I want to help him feel safe again." The Mafia boss nodded, his gaze still locked on her. For a moment, the silence between them thickened, charged with something unspoken. Respect, tension, curiosity, and something deeper neither dared to name. "You're not like the others," he murmured. His tone had softened, quiet but sincere. "And I appreciate that." Amara blinked, unsure what to say. "Thank you," she managed, though her voice trembled slightly. Before she could say more, a soft chime echoed through the room. Barely audible, but his expression changed instantly. The Mafia boss straightened, all warmth gone. His eyes sharpened, his movements swift and deliberate. He crossed the room toward a control panel near the door. Every muscle tense, Amara froze. What is that?" she whispered, clutching the boy's hand protectively. He didn't look at her when he answered. "Trouble," he said, voice grim. "Someone's testing the perimeter, seeing how far they can push before I respond." Amara's breath caught. "You mean someone's here?" "Maybe," he replied. His gaze scanned the monitors, then the window. Or maybe they're just watching. Either way, they'll learn soon enough what kind of mistake that is. Fear rippled through her, but underneath it, an unexpected rush of adrenaline surged. She was terrified, yet part of her was drawn to this moment, to the razor's edge he lived on, to him. He turned to her, his expression unreadable but his voice steady. "Stay close," he commanded softly. "If anything happens, your only job is to protect him. Understand?" Amara nodded instantly. "I understand." He looked at her one last time, his dark eyes holding hers in a rare, wordless exchange. Then he turned and moved down the hall, silent and lethal, like a storm gathering strength. Amara followed a few steps behind, clutching the boy's small hand, her heart pounding. The mansion's corridors, so elegant just hours ago, now felt like veins of danger, alive, alert, listening. Each step drew her deeper into his world, into the pulse of power and peril that defined his life. And though she didn't know it yet, this moment, the quiet alarm, the shared fear, the unspoken trust, would change everything. Because from that moment on, Amara was no longer an outsider who had stumbled into his life. She was part of it, bound by loyalty, danger, and something neither of them could yet name. Outside, the city gleamed in the sunlight, unaware that inside the mansion's marble walls, a silent war had begun, one not of bullets or blades, but of hearts, choices, and the fragile bond that could either save them or destroy them both. The mansion's silence was broken by the faintest creak of a floorboard in the distance. Amara's pulse quickened instantly. She held the boy closer, feeling his small, warm body trembling against her. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving only the hush of the early morning. But inside, a different storm was brewing. The Mafia boss's eyes snapped toward the sound, sharp, commanding. "Stay here," he ordered, his voice calm but deadly. "Do not move." Amara nodded, though fear tightened her chest. I won't," she whispered. He moved silently, each step measured, precise, as if the shadows themselves obeyed him. Amara watched him, heart hammering, as he rounded the corner and disappeared from view. Every instinct screamed that something dangerous was coming, and that he was the only one who could face it. A sudden noise, a muffled shout from the east wing, made Amara freeze. Her mind raced. The boy clutched her arm tightly. "Amara, it's scary," he whispered. "I know, sweetheart," she murmured, brushing his damp hair from his forehead. "But I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." Minutes passed like hours. Then came the sound of a door slamming, echoing through the mansion's vast halls. Amara's breath caught. She heard the Mafia boss's low, controlled voice somewhere in the distance, issuing commands she could barely make out. It was the language of power and danger, every word cutting through the silence like a blade. Then suddenly, he appeared. Backlit by the dim hallway light, his expression unreadable, his eyes burning with purpose, he motioned for her to follow. Without hesitation, Amara scooped the boy into her arms and hurried after him. They moved through the mansion's corridors in silence, shadows following their every step. Amara's hands trembled, but she kept the boy close, whispering soft, steady words. The Mafia boss's presence was a shield, dark, controlled, unbreakable. When they reached the main hall, the threat became clear. A figure dressed in black was clinging to the outer wall, trying to force open a side window. The Mafia boss's eyes narrowed, and in that instant the intruder realized he had made a terrible mistake. "Get out," the boss commanded, his voice low and cold, carrying the weight of death itself. The intruder hesitated, panic flickering across his face. Amara's heart pounded so hard it hurt. She had never seen such control, such lethal calm. The man she once feared, the man who terrified everyone else, moved like a predator, swift, silent, certain. The intruder raised his hands. I don't want trouble," he stammered. "You've chosen poorly," the Mafia boss replied, his voice steady as steel. "Leaving now is your only chance." The man didn't wait for another warning. He bolted, vanishing into the fog-drenched morning outside. Silence returned to the mansion, a heavy, uneasy silence that seemed to echo with everything unspoken. The Mafia boss turned to her, his tone softening, his presence less imposing, though still powerful. "Are you both unharmed?" he asked quietly. Amara nodded, holding the boy tighter. Yes, thanks to you, she whispered. He studied her for a long moment, his eyes dark but no longer cold. You stayed calm, he said at last. Most people would have panicked or run. You didn't, Amara swallowed hard. I couldn't leave him, she said simply. He's just a child. His gaze lingered on her, thoughtful, intense. And for that, he said slowly, I trust you, more than most. The words hung in the air between them, heavy, deliberate, electric. Amara felt her breath catch. There was something unspoken there, something dangerous, something that neither of them dared to name. Outside, the city stirred to life, cars in the distance, birds breaking the morning calm. But inside these walls, time seemed to hold its breath. Amara realized with a mix of awe and dread that she had crossed a line she could never return from. She was no longer a visitor in his world. She was part of it now, woven into its rhythm of loyalty, fear, power, and forbidden connection. And as she stood there, the boy's head resting against her shoulder, she felt a quiet promise form within her heart. She would protect him, no matter the danger, no matter the cost, and somehow, she knew she was beginning to care for them both. The mansion had settled into an uneasy calm after the morning's confrontation. The sunlight streamed through the tall windows, soft and warm, but inside, a different kind of tension lingered, a quiet awareness of danger narrowly avoided. Amara carefully set the boy on a plush chair in the sitting room, brushing stray hair from his forehead. It's okay now, she whispered softly. No one is going to hurt you. He nodded, a small, shaky smile tugging at his lips. Thank you, Amara. She smiled back, her chest tightening with a protective instinct she hadn't expected. He was just a child, fragile, innocent, and somehow, in the span of one night, he had already claimed a piece of her heart. The Mafia boss entered silently. His presence filled the room instantly, commanding, grounded, and utterly composed. He stood a few feet away, watching the two of them with eyes that seemed to measure every movement, every emotion. Everything is secure? He asked, his tone clipped but not unkind. Yes, Amara replied softly. The intruder ran. There's no immediate danger. He nodded once, his gaze lingering on her longer than she expected. You handled yourself well. Amara blinked, surprised by the praise. I just tried to stay calm, she admitted. I wasn't sure what to do at first. He stepped closer, and for the first time, she felt the full weight of his presence. It wasn't just authority or danger, it was intensity, depth, and an unspoken acknowledgement of the risk she had taken. Most would have frozen, he said quietly. You didn't. You acted. Her cheeks flushed with warmth. I couldn't leave him alone, she said, her voice soft but steady. He studied her silently, his expression unreadable. Yet something in his eyes shifted. A subtle change, almost imperceptible but real. She could feel it in the way her pulse quickened, in the way the air between them seemed to hum with something unspoken. Fear? Fascination? Maybe both. The boy stirred, glancing between them with wide, innocent eyes. Daddy, she stayed with me, he said proudly. The Mafia boss's lips twitched, the faintest trace of a smile ghosting across his features. He knelt down slightly to the boy's level, his hand brushing gently through his son's hair. She did, he said quietly, and she kept you safe. Amara's heart swelled at the acknowledgement, though she tried to hide it. The Mafia boss had seen her courage, her steadiness, and, though he would never say it aloud, her heart. For a brief moment, silence filled the room. It wasn't empty, it was charged. Every unspoken word, every quiet breath seemed to hold meaning. And in that silence, something between them shifted. A bond beginning to take form, fragile but undeniable. Finally, his voice broke the stillness. Low, deliberate, controlled. You've earned more than my trust today, he said. You've earned my respect. Amara's breath caught. Respect from him was rare, precious, and she felt the weight of it settle deep in her chest. Thank you, she whispered. That means a lot. He nodded once, his eyes still fixed on her, his gaze holding just a second too long. A moment that stretched, dangerous, and magnetic. Then, as if sensing the shift, he drew back slightly. "You should rest," he said, his tone softer now. "You'll need your strength. The boy, he's safe for now, but this world, it is never truly safe." Amara looked down at the boy, who was now drifting into sleep, his small hand still clutching the edge of her sleeve. Then she looked back at the man standing before her. "I'll stay," she said quietly. "I want to help him, and I want to do the right thing." His eyes met hers, dark, intense, unreadable. For a fleeting second she saw something flicker there. Gratitude, perhaps. Maybe even something more. But just as quickly, it vanished, replaced by the mask of calm control he always wore. "Very well," he said at last, his voice measured, steady. "Stay. But remember, in this world, trust and loyalty are everything. One wrong move, and there are consequences." Amara nodded, her expression firm. She understood. Completely. She was no stranger to hardship or fear. But this was different. This world demanded everything, and yet, despite the uncertainty, a strange thrill coursed through her veins. She wasn't just surviving it anymore. She was part of it. As the afternoon light streamed through the mansion's tall windows, casting long golden shadows across the floor, Amara realized that something inside her had changed. Something inside him had changed, too. Their bond had deepened, forged through danger, tested by trust, and strengthened by the silent understanding that neither dared to speak aloud. And somewhere beneath the weight of power, control, and danger, a fragile connection had begun to bloom, a connection that defied reason, a connection that neither of them could ignore. Outside, the city carried on, indifferent, unknowing, its streets alive with ordinary sounds of life. But inside the mansion's walls, a quiet storm was building, a storm of trust, of unspoken desire, of danger and fascination intertwined, and as Amara stood in the fading light, she understood something profound. This was only the beginning. The evening sun cast long golden shadows across the mansion's grand halls. Yet, the warmth outside could not seep into the tension within. Amara had spent the day tending to the boy, making sure he was comfortable, safe and warm, while the Mafia boss maintained his silent watch over the property. The quiet moments between them were few, but charged. Each glance, each subtle gesture, carried an unspoken weight neither dared to name. "Dinner will be ready soon," the Mafia boss said, his tone steady, controlled, but edged with that quiet authority that made Amara's pulse quicken. I can help," she offered, her voice trembling just slightly. She wasn't sure if it was fear or something else, something about being in his presence that made her heart race. He regarded her for a long moment, his piercing eyes studying every movement. Then unexpectedly he nodded. "Very well," he said quietly. "Stay close. I don't want anything to happen to either of you." Amara's heart skipped a beat. The words were simple, but the weight behind them was undeniable. Stay close. In his world, that meant trust, proximity, and perhaps protection, a rare acknowledgement from a man who commanded fear and respect in equal measure. As she moved toward the kitchen, Amara stole a glance back at him. He stood near the window, looking out at the city lights with that same quiet intensity that had both terrified and fascinated her since the first night. There was a softness in his eyes now, barely there, but real. A softness reserved for only two people in this house, the boy, and unexpectedly, her. The boy tugged at her sleeve. "Amara, will he be okay?" She knelt beside him, brushing his damp hair gently from his face. "Yes," she whispered. "He's always careful, and I think he trusts you now too." The boy's eyes brightened, and for a brief, precious moment, she allowed herself to smile. In a world built on danger and secrets, that tiny thread of trust felt like victory. Later, they joined the Mafia boss for dinner. The table was set simply, yet elegantly. The quiet ritual of the meal felt almost normal, almost peaceful. Amara sat across from him, the boy between them. She could feel the gravity of his presence, could feel his gaze even when he wasn't looking directly at her. "You've been patient," he said quietly, still watching the boy. Not many could manage both fear and responsibility with such steadiness. I just care," she murmured, her voice soft. "He's a child. He deserves to feel safe." His gaze flicked to hers, sharp, unreadable, and intense. "Few people understand that," he said. Most see danger, chaos, weakness. You see him? Amara's cheeks warmed under his words. There it was again, that pull between them. Dangerous, thrilling, unavoidable. A tension neither could ignore, though both tried to pretend it wasn't there. Then, a faint sound. A shift in the air. A shadow flickered across the window. Amara froze. Her heartbeat thundered in her chest. The Mafia boss's head snapped toward the noise, eyes narrowing. He moved like a predator, silent, controlled, deadly. Amara instinctively pulled the boy close, her hands trembling. "Stay calm," he murmured, his voice low, commanding, and close enough for her to feel the vibration of it. His presence was overwhelming, protective, and in that moment she felt both fear and safety. Minutes passed. The threat faded into nothing but rain against glass. Finally, he returned to his seat, exhaling softly. He looked at Amara then, truly looked, and for the first time, she saw it, the hint of vulnerability behind the power. "You're remarkable," he said quietly, almost a whisper. "Not many people would stay. Not many would care, but you've earned something tonight." He paused, his eyes steady on hers. "Trust, respect, and perhaps something more." Amara's breath caught. Something more. Her heart raced as realization bloomed inside her, an understanding that the bond between them was shifting, born from fear, strengthened by trust, and now, touched by something dangerously close to desire. The boy yawned softly, breaking the silence. Amara smiled faintly, guiding him to his room, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. The Mafia boss watched her in silence, and in his gaze there was acknowledgement, respect, and an unspoken promise of something neither could yet define. Outside, the city lights shimmered, oblivious to the quiet storm building within the mansion walls. And inside, Amara felt the dangerous thrill of proximity, the closeness of a man she feared and yet couldn't stay away from. And she knew, deep down, nothing would ever be the same again. Night had fallen, draping the mansion in shadows that crept along the walls with quiet, deliberate intent. Amara sat in the dimly lit sitting room, the boy asleep nearby, his small breath steady against the hush of the house. She tried to calm the racing of her heart, but it refused to listen. The events of the past day, the storm, the fall, the intruder, still churned inside her mind, and somewhere deep down, she knew this night would bring no rest. The soft click of a door made her flinch. She froze. For a heartbeat, she couldn't tell if it was her imagination or something far more real. Then from the shadows, he appeared. The Mafia boss stepped into the faint light, his expression unreadable, every movement measured and deliberate, like a predator that already knew it ruled the dark. "Stay close," he instructed, his voice low, commanding. "Dangerous, I sense. Someone is testing us again." Amara's pulse quickened. "Testing how?" she whispered, clutching the boy's blanket, her fingers trembling. He moved to the window, scanning the grounds beyond with eyes that missed nothing. "There are people who would exploit weakness," he said quietly. "Tonight, someone wants to see if I can be caught off guard." He turned toward her, his gaze sharp enough to pierce the air. "And you," he added, voice tightening. "You might be part of that test." Her stomach nodded. "Me? How? You're here," he cut in sharply. "They'll notice. That makes you important." Amara swallowed hard. Fear rippled through her, but beneath it, a strange current of adrenaline. She had stepped into this world by choice, and now she had to survive it. Her body tensed instantly. She turned, eyes wide, and before she could react, she moved, instinctively placing herself in front of the boy, shielding him. The Mafia boss's head snapped toward the same shadow, eyes narrowing, his entire body shifting, like a loaded weapon ready to strike. "You see?" he murmured darkly, almost to himself. "They're here." The intruder emerged from the darkness, slight, cautious, trying to vanish into the very shadows that betrayed him. But against the Mafia boss's presence, he looked small, fragile, already doomed. "Stay behind me," the boss commanded, his voice deep, cold, absolute. He moved forward with quiet precision, every step radiating lethal control. The intruder froze, realizing too late the scale of his mistake. Amara's hands trembled, but she didn't run. Her resolve hardened. She wasn't just a bystander anymore. She was inside this world now, woven into its danger, its rules, its fragile balance between fear and loyalty. The Mafia boss advanced another step, his tone a low, dangerous growl. "This is your only warning. Leave now, or face consequences you can't even imagine." The intruder hesitated, his eyes darting to the sleeping child. Then panic seized him, he bolted, and within seconds he was gone, vanishing into the night from which he came. The mansion was still again, but the air remained charged. Tension lingered like smoke that refused to clear. Amara let out a shaky breath, pulling the boy close, her heart beat wild beneath her ribs. The Mafia boss turned to her, his gaze dark, unreadable, and heavy with something she couldn't name. "You handled that well," he said softly. "Most would have panicked. Most would have frozen." Amara swallowed, her voice barely steady. I just wanted him safe." He studied her, his expression unreadable but his eyes alive with something fierce. "Something like respect. You've earned more than trust tonight," he said quietly. "You've earned acknowledgement. Courage is rare, and in my world, it's even rarer in someone like you." Her heart thudded hard in her chest, caught between fear, pride, and something she didn't dare name. She had crossed invisible lines tonight, and in doing so, she had caught his attention. Dangerous attention, magnetic attention. The boy stirred softly. Amara tucked the blanket around him, brushing his hair back with gentle fingers. The Mafia boss watched her in silence, his jaw tight, eyes fixed on her like he was memorizing something. Then, finally, he stepped back, giving her space to breathe. "Tonight was only a test," he said, his tone calm again, colder, controlled. "There will be others, and each time, you'll need to be ready." Amara lifted her gaze, steady now. I understand." He gave a slow nod, a gesture that, from him, meant more than words ever could. The air between them stayed charged, tense yet alive with something unspoken. Something that neither fear nor reason could fully suppress. Outside, the city slept beneath a quiet, indifferent sky. But inside the mansion, courage, trust, and a dangerous fascination were taking root, and as the night deepened, Amara knew with a trembling certainty this was only the beginning. A bond had formed in the dark, one built on fear, loyalty, and the slow, dangerous bloom of desire. The mansion was quieter now. The echoes of the night's chaos had faded into a fragile calm. Amara sat beside the boy in his room, brushing a stray strand of hair from his forehead. He was finally asleep, peaceful, for the first time since the fall, and only then did she allow herself to exhale. The weight of everything that had happened pressed against her shoulders. Every sound, every shadow still lingered in her mind. The door opened behind her, silent, deliberate. The Mafia boss stepped in. His expression was as unreadable as ever, but there was something different tonight, a softened edge beneath the usual steel, a flicker of acknowledgement he rarely showed. "You've been patient with him," he said quietly, moving closer though keeping his distance. Most people would have faltered, panicked, or fled. Amara looked up, her pulse quickening at the sound of his voice. I couldn't leave him," she whispered. "He needed someone." He studied her for a moment, eyes dark, calculating, and then, softer than before, he said, "Few people have that instinct. Fewer still act on it." Amara felt her cheeks warm under his gaze. "I just did what I thought was right." The boy stirred slightly, a small sigh escaping him. Amara reached to tuck the blanket around his shoulders. The Mafia boss watched her in silence. His expression softened just barely, but it was there. There was admiration in his eyes, and beneath it something deeper, something unspoken. Finally, he said, "You've earned my trust tonight, and a measure of respect." Amara froze, her heart skipping. Respect, from him, was rare, meaningful, and heavy with significance. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice low, almost trembling. He nodded once, slow and deliberate. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, neither looked away. The silence stretched between them, thick, charged, alive with words they didn't dare speak. A shiver ran through her, half fear, half something electric, impossible to ignore. He was the danger she'd been warned about, and yet, in this quiet moment, he was also her protector. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, he said at last, his voice quieter now, thoughtful. The world outside is unforgiving. But for tonight, you've done well. Amara nodded, though her thoughts were spinning. She understood his meaning and the warning beneath it. This world of his was built on danger and power, but for the first time, she didn't feel like an outsider. She had a place here, with him, and with the boy she had vowed to protect. He turned toward the door, pausing just before leaving. Rest now, he said, his tone low, firm, but not unkind. You'll need your strength, and stay close to him. He trusts you, and that trust is everything. Amara's chest tightened, emotion swelling in her throat. She nodded, watching him as he stepped through the doorway, and for just an instant, before his mask of control returned, she saw it. That flicker of something human, something almost tender. When he was gone, she exhaled slowly, her body trembling from the rush of the night. She looked down at the boy, safe, sleeping, and traced the outline of his small hand with her fingers. It grounded her. It reminded her why she was still here. He was safe for now. But she knew this peace wouldn't last. The world outside was relentless, and yet, for the first time, she felt ready for it. Stronger. Because she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was fighting for something. Someone. The mansion seemed to hold its breath. The air thick with unspoken energy, courage, trust, and a quiet, dangerous longing that neither of them could name. Amara closed her eyes, resting her head gently against the boy's shoulder. For a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to feel it, that fragile peace that had finally settled around them. It wouldn't last. It never did in his world. But tonight they had survived, and in surviving, something between them had changed forever. Outside, the city glimmered from the rain, unaware of the quiet storm that had taken root inside the mansion. A bond had been forged, born of danger, tempered by trust, and alive with something perilous and magnetic. The story was only beginning. And Amara knew, as the night deepened around her, nothing, not even fear, could stop what was coming next. The next morning arrived quietly. The mansion bathed in pale sunlight, but the calm was deceptive. Amara moved carefully through the halls, carrying breakfast for the boy, her thoughts still lingering on the events of the night before. Every shadow, every creak of the floorboards reminded her that danger was never far away in this world. The boy greeted her with a sleepy smile. Amara, did he stay up all night? She chuckled softly, setting the tray beside him. He was watching, making sure you were safe. He blinked, then laughed quietly. Daddy? Amara's heart tightened. Yes, she said gently. He cares about you very much, and he trusts you now. As she helped him eat, a shadow fell across the doorway. The Mafia boss stood there, tall, commanding, his eyes scanning the room with quiet precision. Even in the sunlight, he radiated authority, a dangerous calm that made Amara's pulse quicken. Good morning, he said, his voice low and steady. I trust you both slept well? Amara nodded, trying to keep her composure. Yes, thank you. He stepped into the room, his gaze lingering on her a moment longer than necessary. The silent intensity between them was palpable, a thread of tension neither could ignore. Every glance, every subtle movement carried weight, charged with unspoken understanding and something dangerously close to longing. We need to be vigilant today, he said, his tone shifting, grounded and serious. Last night was only a test. There are others, people who would see weakness and exploit it. You must be ready. Amara's stomach tightened, but she nodded. I understand. The boy looked between them, sensing the tension but not fully grasping it. Is it going to be dangerous? He asked softly. Yes, she admitted, her hand finding his shoulder in quiet reassurance. But we'll face it together, and he'll keep us safe. The Mafia boss's gaze flicked toward her. Something unspoken passed between them, a look that carried both warning and trust. It was subtle, but it was real. An acknowledgement of her courage, and perhaps something more. As the morning unfolded, subtle signs of danger began to emerge. A faint shadow moving near the edge of the property, a quiet, unfamiliar footstep in the garden. Each time the Mafia boss reacted instantly, precise, controlled, commanding, while Amara and the boy stayed close, learning the rhythm of vigilance in his world. Amara watched him closely, the way he moved, the way his instincts sharpened with every sound. There was no hesitation in him, no fear, But beneath that steel, she saw something else, a guarded protectiveness, especially when his eyes met hers. And in those moments, she felt her pulse quicken, a strange mix of fear, admiration, and something deeper, something she didn't dare name. Later, when the day seemed to calm again, he spoke to her quietly, his voice low, almost private. "You've grown." "Capable," he said, his eyes holding hers for a long moment. "Not just with him, but in this world. That is rare." Amara's heart skipped a beat. I'm just trying to do the right thing," she murmured. He took a step closer, his expression unreadable, but his voice softened. "Doing the right thing," he said slowly, "takes courage. And most people lack it. You don't." Her cheeks flushed, her breath catching slightly at the sincerity in his tone. There was power in his words, not just command, but recognition. And that, more than anything, made her chest tighten. She could feel the air between them change, heavier, warmer, charged with an emotion neither of them fully understood. The closeness was undeniable now, a bond built on danger, trust, and shared survival. But beneath it all, desire simmered quietly, waiting. Then, just as the stillness began to settle again, a faint sound broke through the air, a quiet alarm, barely audible, but unmistakable. The Mafia boss's head snapped toward the sound. His entire demeanor shifted, every muscle alert, every motion controlled. He moved toward the source with lethal precision. Amara didn't think. She followed, clutching the boy close, her heart pounding in her chest. The tension in the air was electric now, alive with the threat of what lay ahead. Whatever peace the morning had brought, it was gone. The new threat was close, closer than before, testing them again, forcing Amara to confront what it truly meant to be part of his world. And as she looked at him, this man who had once terrified her, whose name carried fear wherever it was spoken, she realized something undeniable. Fear and desire had become inseparable. And nothing would ever be the same again. Outside, the city went about its quiet rhythm, oblivious to the storm building within the mansion walls. A storm of danger, trust, and a connection that neither Amara nor the Mafia boss could ignore. The morning sun filtered through the mansion's tall windows, casting soft golden patterns across the polished marble floors. Amara moved quietly through the halls, carrying a tray of breakfast for the boy. He had slept peacefully after the confrontation the previous night, and she felt a sense of relief she hadn't realized she'd been needing. A small voice called out as she entered the kitchen. "Amara, did he stay?" She smiled softly, setting the tray down. "Yes, he stayed," she said. "He's always watching, making sure you're safe." The boy grinned, a spark of pride lighting up his eyes. "I like him," he said simply. Amara laughed quietly, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "He cares about you," she said. "And he trusts you now. That means something." As she helped him eat, a familiar shadow appeared in the doorway, the Mafia boss. His expression was calm yet intense, commanding yet careful. Every movement exuded authority. Every glance carried a quiet weight of expectation. "Good morning," he said, his voice low and measured. "I trust everyone slept well." "Yes," Amara replied, trying to steady her tone. "Thank you." He stepped closer, and for a brief moment, the tension between them thickened. There was something unspoken in his gaze, a quiet acknowledgement of courage, of loyalty, and of the strange bond forming between them. "We must remain vigilant," he said, his tone serious. "Last night was only a taste of what's coming. There are others who would exploit weakness. You must be ready." Amara nodded, determination setting deep in her chest. "I understand," she said. The boy looked up at them both, sensing the tension but trusting them completely. "Will it be dangerous again?" "Yes," Amara admitted softly, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. "But we'll face it together, and he'll protect us." The Mafia boss's gaze flicked to her, a subtle, unreadable flicker passing through his eyes. Approval, curiosity, and something far more intimate. Amara's pulse quickened. She was becoming part of his world now, entwined with its dangers, its rules, its hidden code of loyalty. Throughout the morning, subtle signs of danger surfaced: an unfamiliar car outside the gates, quiet movements in the garden. Each time, he reacted instantly, controlled, precise, lethal in his calm efficiency. Amara and the boy followed close behind, learning the rhythm of vigilance in a world that offered no second chances. Yet even amid the danger, she noticed the small human moments beneath his commanding presence. The way he paused when the boy spoke, the faint softness when his eyes met hers, the care buried beneath layers of discipline and power. She felt herself drawn to him, not just for his strength, but for the rare glimpses of vulnerability he allowed her to see. During a quiet pause, his voice came low, almost private. "You've grown capable, not just with him, but in this world." "That's rare," Amara's heart skipped. I'm just trying to do the right thing," she murmured. He looked at her, eyes steady. "Doing the right thing," he said slowly, "takes courage, and most people lack it. You don't." Her cheeks warmed. Something unspoken passed between them. A closeness, a connection neither dared name, but both could feel. As the morning stretched on, the calm shattered. A faint alarm, barely audible, echoed through the halls. Someone was testing their defenses. Instantly his expression hardened. The softness vanished. The predator returned. He moved toward the source, every step silent and lethal. Amara followed on instinct, clutching the boy close, her heart pounding in her chest. This was her world now, unforgiving, dangerous, and raw. And she knew that surviving it meant standing beside him, even when fear whispered otherwise. As she looked at him, this man she had once feared, now trusted, and maybe even felt something deeper for, she realized the truth she could no longer deny. Amidst fear, uncertainty, and peril, her heart was already his. Outside, the city carried on, oblivious to the tension, the loyalty, and the slow-burning attraction unfolding behind the mansion's guarded walls. Inside, bonds were solidifying, trust was deepening, and between them, beneath the danger, the silence, and the weight of their unspoken words, something undeniable was taking root. A connection both dangerous and irresistible. The mansion was cloaked in the quiet tension of the evening, shadows stretching long across the walls. The air was thick, still, alive with the kind of silence that came before danger. Amara moved carefully through the hallways, the boy's small hand wrapped tightly in hers. She could feel her heartbeat echoing in her chest, not just from fear, but from the strange, electric anticipation that always seemed to follow the Mafia boss wherever he went. "You need to stay close," he said, his voice emerging from the dim corridor beside her. It was low, calm, and commanding, a tone that didn't need to be raised to demand attention. "This threat isn't like the others," he continued. "It's direct, personal." Amara nodded, her grip on the boy tightening. "I'm ready," she whispered, though her pulse betrayed a blend of fear and determination that even she couldn't hide. Together, they moved through the mansion's vast halls, the soft creak of the wooden floors echoing in the quiet. The chandelier above flickered slightly, its light stretching long shadows that danced across the walls like restless ghosts. Then, from the far end of the main hall, movement. A figure emerged from the dark. A shadow, tall and sharp-edged, moving with deliberate purpose. "You shouldn't have come here," the intruder said, his voice rough, laced with malice. The Mafia boss's eyes narrowed, a quiet, lethal calm radiating from him. "Leave," he said, his tone low and final, "or face the consequences." The intruder hesitated, taking a step forward, testing him. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Amara felt her stomach tighten, her pulse racing in her throat. This wasn't another warning. This wasn't a rehearsal. This was danger, real and immediate, and yet she didn't back away. Her eyes flicked to the Mafia boss, and something in his presence, his steadiness, his unspoken confidence, ignited something inside her. She stepped slightly forward, voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "Go," she said clearly. "You won't succeed here." The intruder's eyes snapped to her, momentarily thrown off by her defiance. He hadn't expected her to speak, and in that fraction of hesitation, he lost. The Mafia boss moved like a shadow, fast and precise. A blur of motion, a strike, a shift in the air, and within seconds, the threat was neutralized. The intruder stumbled back, realizing too late the mistake he'd made. He retreated into the night, leaving behind only the echo of his footsteps and the heavy scent of tension still hanging in the room. Amara exhaled shakily, pulling the boy close. "Is it over?" she asked, her voice trembling but calm. "For now," he said, stepping closer. His eyes found hers, intense, unreadable, yet softened by something subtle. Something human, admiration, concern, and perhaps something deeper. "You did well," he said quietly. "Most would have panicked. Most would have run. You didn't." Amara's cheeks warmed under his gaze. "I just wanted him safe," she said softly, glancing at the boy now half asleep in her arms. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "And because of that," he said, voice low, measured, "you've earned more than my trust tonight. You've earned my respect." Her heart raced. Respect, from him, meant something more than words could carry. It was acknowledgement, validation, and something else that lingered between them, unspoken, but alive. The silence that followed was heavy, charged. The kind of silence that hummed with everything neither dared to say. As she adjusted the boy's blanket, her hand brushed against his as he moved past her. The touch was fleeting, barely a second, but it sent a rush of warmth through her chest, a spark that neither of them could deny. He paused. "You're different," he said finally, voice softer now, edged with something almost vulnerable. "Most people fear me, some despise me, but you see me," her breath caught. His words cut through the quiet, deeper than she expected. I don't know what to say," she murmured, her voice barely audible. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the faint warmth radiating from him. His tone dropped to a near whisper. "Say nothing," he said. "Just stay close." Her heart pounded, and for a moment the danger outside faded. There was only this quiet connection, this fragile, forbidden closeness that neither of them had planned, but both were powerless to resist. Outside, the night carried on, silent, unaware of the storm that had just passed. But inside the mansion, something had shifted. Bonds had been tested. Trust had been earned. And beneath the layers of fear and tension, something undeniable had begun to take shape. A connection forged in fire, danger, and the unspoken pull between two souls caught in a world that refused to let them be ordinary. The spark between Amara and the Mafia boss had grown. Dangerous, fragile, and electric. And though neither said it aloud, they both knew it was only the beginning. The mansion was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that came after chaos, when the air still hummed faintly with tension, and the ghosts of danger lingered like dust on the polished floors. Amara moved through the corridors with a careful calm, her footsteps soft against the marble. Behind her, the boy's gentle laughter echoed faintly, bouncing off the tall walls. He was finally at ease. For the first time in days, she saw a spark of innocence return to his eyes. For a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to breathe, to relax. But deep down, she knew peace in this house was never permanent. From the shadows he appeared, the Mafia boss. His presence filled the hall effortlessly, commanding, powerful. But tonight, there was something different about him. Something quieter. The edge of danger was still there, but muted beneath an unfamiliar softness. He watched her as she adjusted the boy's blanket, every motion deliberate, every glance carrying weight. "You've grown stronger," he said finally, his voice low, deliberate, measured, not just in courage, but in understanding this world, this life. Amara looked up, startled by the rare note of sincerity in his tone. I'm just trying to do the right thing," she murmured, brushing a strand of hair from the boy's forehead. "Doing the right thing," he replied slowly, taking a step closer. "Takes more than instinct. It takes courage, and most people..." His gaze flicked briefly to the window, to the dark world outside. "Most people don't have it. You do." Her heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure what moved her more, the words themselves, or the quiet conviction behind them. The air between them felt charged, as if even silence carried meaning. She met his gaze, cheeks warming under the weight of his attention. For a long, suspended moment, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Words felt small compared to the bond that had formed between them. the shared glances in danger, the unspoken trust that had kept them alive. The boy stirred lightly, breaking the stillness. Amara knelt beside him, her fingers gently tucking the blanket around his small shoulders. When she rose, the Mafia boss was standing closer than before, so close she could feel the faint warmth radiating from him. The air thickened, a delicate tension humming between them. "You're different," he said quietly, his tone softer now, intimate. "Most fear me. Some despise me. But you," his eyes locked onto hers. "You see me, truly see me." Her breath caught. The words struck deep, unexpected and disarming. No one had ever spoken to her like that, stripped of armor and pretense. I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice trembling. He stepped forward, closing the distance between them until she could feel the gravity of his presence, the pull that had been growing stronger with each passing day. "Say nothing," he murmured. "Just stay close. That's enough." Her heart pounded so loudly she thought he might hear it. She nodded faintly, understanding not just the words but what lay beneath them. Trust, respect, and the dangerous undercurrent of something more. Later, as they moved through the mansion together, the quiet unraveling of the day began to shift. Small signs, barely noticeable to anyone else, betrayed a new threat brewing beyond the walls. A faint shadow at the edge of the property. A flicker on the security monitor. A sound, too soft to be accidental. The Mafia boss noticed everything. His eyes sharpened, his posture tightened, every sense locked onto the unseen danger. Without needing to be told, Amara followed. Her pulse raced, but fear no longer ruled her. The boy clung to her hand and she squeezed gently, her courage reinforced by the man ahead of her. The man who had taught her to face fear, not flee from it. For the first time, she realized that her bond with both of them, the boy and the boss, had become something far greater than duty or survival. It was connection. It was loyalty. It was family. As the day faded into night, they returned to the grand hall. The lamps cast long shadows that swayed across the marble, painting the walls in muted gold. The silence was alive again, thick with anticipation. The Mafia boss stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the quiet power beneath his stillness. His eyes found hers, steady, unwavering. "Tonight will not be easy," he said, his voice low, resolute. "The threats will grow, but you'll be ready, because of today, because of this bond. You've changed the rules, for all of us." Amara swallowed hard, her chest tightening with equal parts fear and determination. "I will be ready," she whispered, and she meant it. He held her gaze for a moment longer, long enough for her to feel the weight of his trust. And then he turned, his shadow merging with the dim light of the hall. As he walked away, Amara stood still, her heart still racing, her thoughts tangled between duty and desire. Outside, the city slept, oblivious, indifferent. But inside the mansion, something had shifted forever. Trust had been earned. Bonds had deepened. And within the walls that had once echoed with fear, something far more dangerous was taking root. A connection between two souls from opposite worlds, bound by loyalty, danger, and an unspoken desire that neither could deny. Whatever waited beyond the night, they would face it together, and this time, Amara knew she was no longer just surviving in his world. She was part of it. The mansion was bathed in the pale light of early evening, shadows stretching across the marble floors like long, silent fingers. Amara moved cautiously through the corridor, the boy close at her side. Her nerves coiled tight, humming with the memory of danger. The air itself seemed to listen, heavy with unspoken warning. Tonight felt different, heavier, more urgent. Then, from the dim glow of the hall, he appeared, the Mafia boss, silent, composed, his presence grounding and overwhelming all at once. "This one will not be subtle," he said, voice deep and deliberate. "You must trust me, follow my lead, and stay close." Amara nodded, tightening her grip on the boy's hand. Her pulse raced, a mixture of fear, adrenaline, and something deeper, something she couldn't yet name. I'm ready," she murmured. A sudden noise shattered the calm, glass breaking somewhere beyond the garden, followed by a muffled shout. His eyes sharpened instantly. every muscle in his body coiled like a predator about to strike. Amara's heart leapt. She'd faced danger before, but never like this. Never with the weight of his presence beside her, the raw electricity of being seen and protected. Together they moved, silent, deliberate, toward the sound. From the shadows, the intruder emerged, reckless, armed, eyes burning with intent. "Leave now," the Mafia boss warned, voice low, dangerous, "or you'll regret it." The man hesitated, then lunged, and in that instant, chaos erupted. He moved like lightning, every strike calculated, controlled, deadly. The fight was brief, brutal, and over before Amara could even breathe. The intruder fled into the night, leaving behind only silence and the echo of her racing heart. "Is it over?" she asked, holding the boy close, steady, protective. "For now," he replied, stepping to her side. His gaze caught hers, intense, unwavering, yet softened by something fragile, something dangerously close to tenderness. "You did well," he said quietly. "You stayed calm, you protected him, and you trusted your instincts." Her cheeks flushed. I just wanted him safe," she whispered, glancing at the boy. He studied her, and for a fleeting second, his expression changed. The mask of the ruthless boss slipped, revealing something human, something real. "And because of that," he said, "you've earned more than my trust. You've earned respect and perhaps something more." Her heart skipped. Something more. The weight of those words lingered in the air, thick and electric. Their eyes locked, unspoken tension sparking between them like static. The boy stirred, and as Amara bent to adjust his blanket, her hand brushed his. Just a touch, but it was enough to send a shiver down her spine. "You're different," he murmured. "Most fear me. Some despise me, but you see me?" Her voice trembled. I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," he replied. "Just stay close. That's enough." The mansion fell silent once more. Only the faint rustle of curtains and the echo of hearts still beating too fast. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the storm of courage, trust, and desire that had just been born within those walls. Inside, bonds had been tested. Trust had been earned. And between them, something fragile, dangerous, and undeniable had begun to take shape, glowing brighter in the aftermath of fear. And as they stood together, the boss, the woman, and the child, Amara realized something she could no longer deny. She didn't want to run. She didn't want to escape his world. She wanted to face it. With him, with trust, with courage, and with the slow awakening promise of something neither of them could ever extinguish. The mansion was quiet now, the echoes of the night's chaos fading into a fragile calm. Amara sat in the sitting room, the boy asleep beside her, and finally let herself exhale. The events of the past hours had left her trembling, yet exhilarated. Danger had tested her courage, and in the process, something deeper had begun to grow between her and the Mafia boss. He appeared silently in the doorway, a shadow among shadows, yet impossibly present. His eyes scanned the room, settling on her with an intensity that made her heart quicken. "Are you unharmed?" His voice low, careful, deliberate. Amara nodded, brushing a strand of hair from the boy's forehead. "Yes, we're safe," she murmured. "Thanks to you." He studied her, and for the briefest moment, a flicker of vulnerability crossed his features, before he masked it again with his usual control. "You were remarkable tonight," he said quietly. "Most would have panicked. Most would have run, but you stood your ground." Her cheeks warmed. I just wanted him safe," she whispered, glancing down at the sleeping boy. The Mafia boss's gaze softened, a subtle acknowledgement of something beyond admiration. "And because of that," he said, stepping closer, "you've earned more than trust. You've earned respect, and perhaps something more." Her breath caught. Something more. The words, unspoken but implied, made her pulse race. The bond they had forged through danger, trust, and shared responsibility had grown into something undeniably personal, something that stirred both fear and longing. For a long moment, silence filled the room, heavy with unspoken words. The boy stirred slightly, and Amara bent to adjust his blanket. Her fingers brushed against the Mafia boss's hand. just for a second. But the contact sent a rush of warmth and tension through her. "You're different," he said finally, voice low, almost intimate. "Most fear me. Some despise me. But you see me. Truly see me." Amara's chest tightened. She had never felt anyone look at her this way. So intensely. So personally, I don't know what to say, she murmured. "Say nothing," he replied softly, taking a measured step closer. "Just stay close," her heart pounded. The words carried a weight that went far beyond instruction. It was trust, acknowledgement, and a dangerous spark of connection she could no longer ignore. They moved to the balcony, the cool night air brushing past them, the city lights twinkling below like distant stars. The quiet intimacy of the moment was almost surreal after the chaos, a fragile pause that allowed emotions to surface. "You've changed this place," he said quietly, eyes on hers. "You've brought courage, hope, and something unexpected." Amara swallowed, feeling the pull between them, that delicate tension born of shared trials and unspoken trust. I never imagined being part of this world," she admitted softly. "But I feel like I belong here. With you. With him." The Mafia boss's gaze softened again, the mask of authority slipping just enough to reveal the faintest hint of vulnerability. "And you do," he said, his voice low. "Deliberate, because you've proven yourself, not just in courage, but in heart." Her breath caught, and for a moment, they simply stood there, close, connected by danger, by trust, by the quiet promise of something more. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the fragile electric bond forming high above in the mansion. Amara realized she no longer feared the world he inhabited. She feared nothing, not the danger, not the chaos, because she had him, and he had her. And in that mutual trust, that shared courage, something deeper had begun to bloom, a connection that neither time nor peril could ever break. As the night stretched on, she leaned slightly against him, feeling the steady warmth of his presence. And in that quiet, intimate moment, she knew one thing for certain. The events of the past days had changed everything, and tomorrow, no matter what challenges awaited, they would face them together, bound by trust, by courage, and a growing, undeniable connection that neither could deny. The first light of dawn filtered through the mansion's tall windows, painting the rooms in shades of gold and silver. The echoes of danger, courage, and quiet. Electric tension still lingered in the air like a living presence. Amara stood near the balcony, the boy asleep behind her, and finally let herself breathe, allowing the exhaustion of fear and adrenaline to wash over her. The Mafia boss approached in silence. Every step was measured, deliberate, yet somehow softer than before. His gaze locked onto hers, intense, unflinching. But behind that steel, she saw something new. Vulnerability. "You've changed everything," he said quietly. His voice was low, deliberate, carrying a weight that words alone could never hold. "Not just here, but in me." Amara's chest tightened. She had expected command, danger, control. Not this confession, quiet yet powerful in its sincerity. I only wanted to help," she murmured. "I never imagined—" "You didn't need to imagine," he interrupted gently, stepping closer. "Because you've shown me what courage looks like, what loyalty feels like, and what heart truly means." Her pulse quickened. The man who once seemed untouchable, impenetrable, was standing before her, open and human. And in that vulnerability, something unspoken passed between them. A connection, a promise. The boy stirred softly. Amara turned, adjusting his blanket. The Mafia boss watched, his eyes soft with quiet admiration, and something deeper. He reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "You've earned my trust," he whispered. "And more than that, you've earned my forgiveness." Her breath caught. Forgiveness. The word struck her like light breaking through a storm. I never meant—" "You did what you had to," he said gently. "You saved him. You saved us, and you saved me from myself." Amara's eyes shimmered. For the first time, the walls she'd built around her heart began to crumble. She stepped closer, drawn to his warmth, to the quiet intensity between them. His hand hovered near hers, a silent question. She reached for it, hesitant at first, then sure, her fingers intertwining with his. The touch was electric, A bond formed not from safety, but from survival, trust, and something deeper than either of them could explain. "You belong here," he said finally, his tone steady, certain. "With him, with me, in this life." Amara's heart swelled. I belong with you," she whispered. The words didn't feel forced, they felt inevitable. He drew her into his arms, protective yet tender. Power and vulnerability, balanced perfectly in one embrace. The boy stirred again, blinking sleepily, and smiled, as if he understood everything. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the quiet triumph blooming inside those walls. Danger had been faced, trust had been earned, and love, forbidden, unexpected, undeniable, had found its place. They stood there, hearts beating in rhythm, surrounded by the fragile peace of dawn. In that stillness, Amara realized the truth. Courage had brought her here, trust had bound them, and forgiveness had unlocked the door to love. The Mafia boss leaned closer, his forehead resting against hers. A faint, rare smile crossed his lips. "We face the world together now," he said softly. "No fear, no walls, just us." Amara nodded, heart full. "Just us," she whispered. And as the golden light spread across the mansion, the place that once echoed with chaos became something else entirely. A sanctuary of trust. A symbol of courage. And the birthplace of a love that would never fade. Hey there. Before we begin, just a quick word from the heart. We're a small family here, but with your support, we can grow together. If you love emotional, dramatic love stories like this one, don't just listen, be part of our story. Hit that subscribe button and join the BRD Stories Hub, because every story here begins with you.